Obviously, there are those who are on Ron DeSantis' side when it comes to banning the teaching of AP African American history. You have one, I believe State Senator Manny Diaz Jr. says, despite the lies from the Biden White House, Florida rejected an AP course filled with critical race theory and other obvious violations of Florida law. We proudly require the teaching of African American history. We do not accept woke indoctrination masquerading as education. So look, it is already on its face discussing that whoever the hell this person is an eager participant in this racist manipulation and contortion of history. But I also love like the attempted argument there. What they are admitting is we proudly require the teaching of African American history. What they're saying is, for years, ever since we finally stopped trying to block like MLK Day from being a day, you know how like every year we trot out a fake version of him that we find palatable and then we applaud it and ignore everything else about his history? What if we did that to the entire community's history? And that's what they're doing. We're going to require the teaching of whatever form of African American history we find to be convenient, that is consistent with the narratives that we accept in politics, that isn't a challenge to the millionaires and billionaires who we represent. Will allow, even require that sort of history. We're gonna block everything else, anything that is a challenge to all of that, even if it is the teachings of some of the most notable people in this history. And we have examples, by the way, because you might recall we were playing earlier Ron DeSantis saying, I thought initially it was bad, but my God, the stuff they found. Well, now because they're under pressure, they need to come up with some sort of argument as to what was so egregious about this that the government had to step in and ban the teaching of this course. This government that believes so much in freedom of speech and all of that stuff. So let's jump around in a few of these things. So, okay, there's included reading in Black Queer Studies by Roderick Ferguson, and they quote this as being unacceptable. We have to encourage and develop practices whereby queerness isn't a surrender to the status quo of race, class, gender, and sexuality. It means building forms of queerness that reject the given realities of the government and the market. Dear God, no. No, it can't be allowed that a kid would consider that or something because it's got the word queer in it, I guess. I don't know. In Movements for Black Lives, Leslie K. Jones apparently writes, quote, every day Black people produce an unquantifiable amount of content for the same social media corporations that reproduce the white supremacist superstructure that oppress us. That is objectively true. But by the way, like even if you wanted to have a debate about the last 10 years of social media or whatever, like that is what Twitter is right now. That is literally what the day-to-day experience on Twitter is. No, kids cannot consider the possibility that engaging in social media is potentially giving power to people who don't share your interests. There's a lot of examples of this, including bell hooks, and there was a talk about reparations. Dear God, no. A mention of the fact that there are Black communists in Alabama. Well, no, you can't acknowledge that. I mean, it's a fact, but you can't acknowledge that they exist. Look, nobody who's pushing for these sorts of bans, like Ron DeSantis, is actually terrified of this stuff. That would be bad enough. That would be baby brained enough if they were actually horrified of somebody reading a book that they themselves will never read. Pretending to be terrified by it, though, that seems worse to me. Pretending to be so horrified of the truth, of reality, of critical thought, of discussion, of expanding the bounds of your understanding of America's history, that is just truly pathetic. And that is the movement that they are eagerly building. Miranda, any final thoughts on this topic?
No, you're so right. It's really awful to see all of these elite politicians who don't actually care about whatever the gay agenda that doesn't exist. The agenda is just to exist and live. And critical race theory and trans people, they don't actually care. They're just utilizing these things and teaching fear about them to their constituents so that they can keep and gain more and more power, which in turn equals more and more money. It's just disgusting.
Yeah. I'm gonna, as we transition to a break, I'm gonna leave everyone with a fun bit of irony that I've pointed out many times through all of this. And what I love about this, and by love I mean it makes me want to vomit, is that their argument that they're making is, how dare you say that there is structural racism, that the government would do something racist. How dare you say that? It enrages me that you say it. It makes me so mad that the state government is going to ban the teaching of one race's history. It is an act of structural racism being used to suppress talk of structural racism. I'm sure that is not lost on them either, but it's important that we bear it in mind. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.